Batman, damn it.
Coming to Grand Rapids, Michigan on September 21st and 22nd is GrandCon Gaming and Comics Convention, presented by Celebration Cinemas. Join us in playing or chatting it up with fellow enthusiasts in a community that understands your passions. Get lost in the adventure of your favorite role-playing game. Admire costumes and art from vendors and attendees. Meet the creators behind your favorite mainstream and independent games and comic books. Check out unpublished games and sneak peek at things to come. You can get all this and more at GrandCon. For more information, please visit www.grand-con.com.
Surprised to see me? A little.
Batman, Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, Batman. Or have you met?
Not now.
Great. What did they used to call it? Stereo?
Welcome to The Pullbag. Join us as we dig out our latest comics and discuss them with the rotating panel of the GCRN crew. So sit back and enjoy this week's Pullbag.
That's a real gasser, huh, Mr. J?
I give the punchlines around here. Got it?
Hello and welcome to the Pull Bag. This is episode 25. I am your host, Steve and Mike. Joining me is Steve Megatron. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Yeah. Also joining us in this 25th episode is Ryan The UnEvenFlow. He's back once again, and he'll be back next week when we talk about Hawkeye.
That was very oddly riveting, but anyway. I mean your previous exchange, not mine. Mine was riveting.
Right, yes. Uh-huh. Well, you are Canadian after all.
Yes.
Some are better than others.
That's what she said.
Oh boy. And we are here to talk about Detective Comics comics. I don't get that. Somebody please explain that to me.
It's very old.
I understand that, and I'm glad it's now essentially DC Entertainment for the most part.
Or,
even though,
I thought they were called Warner's Bitch.
There is that when it comes to movies.
It's happening in comics.
Everything.
Yeah, when it's happening to comics too, unfortunately, but that's another story.
Oh boy. I'm sure we'll get into that at the end of the show. Ryan, what have you been up to?
Nothing.
Nothing. Great. Okay.
Well, it hasn't been that long, first of all. Second of all, what do you expect? All I do is play video games and work and stuff, read things. There, summed it up. Go.
Steve, what about you?
Finishing up a final paper for my English class, which is online. Not very fun, but...
See, boring. No.
Yes. I will agree with you, it is boring. It's so boring, I don't want to do it.
And that's why you're doing this instead.
Yes, exactly. Something more interesting.
Well, hopefully.
Time will tell. Time will tell.
Jerks.
But yeah, that and working towards some other specific things for my other show, Altered Geek, and also I've inherited some abilities, you could say, from another website, which I will not.
Yes, we will not name them here.
I want to know more. I suppose you'll tell me
That which
later.
is geek.
Geek in week this.
Oh.
That which is geekly.
Man, we got to talk about what they suckered you in for, too, then.
Not in this episode. We're not. We'll talk about that off air. We are here, much like in episode 20, we are here this time around in episode 25 to talk about DC Comics, brief history about them, and just what happened between the original continuity and the new 52. So originally, they were named National Allied Publications in 1934. They are now part of Warner Brothers Entertainment, Incorporated, a Time Warner company.
Yeah, eventually they were National Comics. That's when they merged with DC, Detective Comics.
Right.
And then at one point they were Superman, DC, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, it was the 60s that they first took on the DC name. The official, I think they took it, yeah, it was 77, they took it on for good. But anyway, yeah, they've been DC for all of my lifetime at least, and I think all of the lifetime of everyone else on here.
Oh yeah, pretty
right.
much.
Oh yes,
and probably most of our listeners. So
Yes.
there's that. And let's be honest, it was the first portion of one of their first names. For a very long time, it means DC was synonymous with Action Comics and also Superman, most notably. I mean, he was their big character for a long time, and it's really only been the I almost said modern era. This isn't football or baseball. The most recent sort of era, like late 80s, 90s, and especially now in the 2000s, that Superman's kind of gone to secondary status, and now it's kind of all about Batman.
Yeah, pretty much.
And in terms of the comics, I mean, they've always had, I shouldn't say always, but for a very long time, again, they had the JLA. Again, it was 1961 or so. Was a group of their heroes getting together, basically. And the JLA has been in DC Comics really ever since. And that is, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, et cetera, et cetera. And again, in recent years, they're trying to kind of get that out of the comic pages and onto the silver screen, which has not exactly gone too well for them, but that's sort of their other big title that they've been synonymous forever with. So, I mean, they were founded on Superman, just to be blunt about it. Batman was always popular, but never the way he is now. And in terms of the comics, I mean, Batman's still their biggest seller on a regular basis. But, I mean, Justice League sells well for them. Green Lantern sells well. Superman still sells, depending on who's writing it. It's been a bit up and down over the past few years. But for the most part, he's still one of their main characters, and he always will be. I mean, Man of Steel kind of proved that.
Yeah. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman the big three of the company?
That's what they call them, yeah. But let's be honest, as much as we'll get on this in a little bit, but DC has trouble in terms of keeping female readers and using female characters effectively. And as much as the big three should be those three, Green Lantern's really been their other flagship title for the last good chunk of time. Really ever since Jeff Johns took it over all those years ago now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's nothing against Green Lantern. It's just one of, again, like I said, one of the issues DC's always had is trying to do well by female characters. And we'll definitely get into that with the relaunch, because that has been probably the most punishing thing they've ever done to female characters, with an awful lot of papers being written about it, and it hasn't gone well for them, particularly characters like Starfire that they've done really badly with. Harley Quinn's another one.
Oh God, Starfire. I can only think of, something my buddy Michael Wilson showed me. Oh God, Starfire. Ugh.
They took her from like a superpowered heroine to I'm trying to find like the best wording that's not going to get me into trouble on this.
It's an explicit podcast. You can.
I know, but I mean, she dresses. She can't dress in like anything that covers up any part of her body anymore magically since the relaunch, and she sleeps with anything that has a pulse,
including tentacles.
Yeah, and Harley compared her vagina to a clown car. So. And that's not a joke. That's an actual, like, they used that as a joke in one of the issues. So, in terms of female empowerment, they're not doing too well.
On the Starfire level, yeah.
Well, and Harley, yeah. Some of the other ones they've done okay with. It's just they've
As you said earlier, it depends on who like you said with Superman, it depends on who the writer is. For me, it's the same way. It depends on who's writing the story.
Gail Simone's the only one. I know that's what you're getting at. She's one of the only ones that writes the female characters competently. I mean, Wonder Woman, they've been trying to get off the ground both as a comic book, really, with a solid creative team, and on film, and they just haven't had any luck really with either.
No,
she's not a bad character. It's just you need to do it the right way. It's weird because, I mean, DC's animated group, oh man, talk about groups or parts of DC that are ticking me off lately. But anyway.
Yeah, we will definitely get to that later.
Anyway, their animated group has done Wonder Woman really well over the years. I mean, her depiction in pretty much everything has been good.
Yes.
Everything from like the Batman Superman films to the actual Wonder Woman film. I mean, if they took that and turned it into a live action movie, it would actually probably be quite good.
Yeah, it probably would. All right, we're going to wind the clock back and we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about DC before the relaunch, the main continuity.
And maybe somebody other than me will talk. No? All right, fine.
Yeah, we all know, dude, you have to carry every show you're on.
No, I don't. What the hell?
Yes, you do. We'll be back after this.
Any minute now, Brainiac will explode. And guess what? You're going with him. No, Darkseid. To get off this rock, you'll have to go through me.
You really are a glutton for punishment. Time and again I've beaten you, humbled you. What makes you think today's outcome will be any different?
Because this time, I won't stop until you're just a greasy smear on my fist. Let's go.
DC Comics in the olden days. I look at some of the old comics now, and I'm so glad I did not actually get into comics until last year.
Man, I'm actually so glad to hear you say that, and that's pretty funny.
I look at like specifically like TV specials that DC has done, or like these. The only one I can think of is like. And this still bugs me to this day. I mean, I know that the dude was Marvel and created Spider-Man and all that stuff, but it's like, why is Stan... There was a couple of DC things that I've seen Stan Lee in, and I'm trying to think, okay, the dude is big in comics, but why is he on a DC special feature? I didn't understand that, didn't get that. But some of these special features that go back, specifically the Dark Knight Rises special feature where they do the chronology of the Batmobile... Some of those early issues, how do people enjoy that art?
All right, well, it's not even the art necessarily I'd point to. It's you probably thought I was joking when I said that, what I said a few minutes ago or seconds ago. I really wasn't. When you asked me for like comics to get into The Punisher, for example, there was no chance in hell I was going with the 80s stuff. Listen, I enjoy it for what it is, and some of the stories, like Mark Barron and some of the others, are very solid. But the art is exceptionally dated, and we're talking about an era that's only 20 years ago. But I mean, the art is dated. Because the art is the way it is, there's a lot of exposition and pointless explaining. And I mean, the issues are just filled with that, and it gets worse the further you go back. And I'm bringing all this up because, I mean, DC's known for sort of being the Silver Age company, the golden age of comics, and when everybody, was first invented, basically. And going back and reading those now is a real slog. I mean, it's kind of neat from, this is the history standpoint, but it's just not good reading, unfortunately. And I don't want to say the modern era is perfect, because I mean the 90s were really the dark ages of comics. Like Spider-Man had the Clone Wars, which was awful. Marvel, actually, as a whole, they had the Onslaught saga, which is still known as the worst crossover of all time. And DC kind of reset themselves back towards the 60s in that time. And that was also a mistake. So it's funny to hear you say that, but I mean, I look back at it, and I guess I just don't have the rose-colored glasses, but it's really better now in a lot of ways. Just like the Transformer comics, I love a lot of the 80s stuff, but overall, the stuff coming up now is better quality. I guess the exception would be Furman's stuff from the 80s still holds up well. But I mean, I read and I appreciate him because he came up with a lot of the characters, but Budiansky's stuff is not great.
Yeah. And the thing with DC now, it's like, I can appreciate the old style, but like now, specifically, they're doing digital first and then collected editions of Batman 66, which is a new ongoing they're basically having new adventures with the old TV show art and style. I like that because I like the old TV show, but just going back and seeing some of those older comics, and maybe it's because I wasn't into comics as a kid at all, that I just don't understand the Silver Age. But I watched like 5 episodes of Batman the Brave and the Bold, and I'm like, wow, this is the Silver Age. This is not my Batman. Because it was like he time traveled or he went to a different planet, and I'm thinking, yes, he is the goddamn Batman, but even he can't do that. And yes, I've seen Justice League where he's done it, but it's just in that whole style. I just didn't care for it. But Steve, where did you start with the original DC continuity?
Where I started with it was in the early 90s. I started reading just prior to and I was collecting the detective comics and some of the various Bat lines at the time, and it was just before Nightfall started. And I read through that, and while I did enjoy it, the art was not nearly as good as it is now, by any means, color or graphically. The stories, yeah, they were good to some degree, but there was still a lot to be desired. While I enjoyed a lot of that, and while there have been some masterpieces from back then, like the Dark Knight Returns and things like that. While I'm not a big fan of the art of the book, I like the story of the book. So I mean, there's a lot of instances where you could have good stories and not very good art. I understood that some of it was meant to be very rough and gritty and not supposed to be very clean, but they've managed to capture all that and actually have an image that looks proper.
Well, if you're getting into the classic stuff, a lot of it from the 80s, the artwork doesn't necessarily hold up, but it's solid enough to move things along, and then the story is just the standout. And if you're talking about sort of classic DC stuff from the 80s, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, which I recently reread, is 20 years ahead of its time, and still like one of the best runs in the history of any comic book. And then you're getting into other stuff. Neil Gaiman's Sandman, most notable, another late 80s property. And yeah, you mentioned Dark Knight Returns, Year One, and then Watchmen, which is one of the most important books ever published. And just they had DC branched out in the 80s with a lot of really interesting and different titles and innovative stuff at the time. And they started pushing the envelope. They had DC Vertigo stuff would start up at that point. Vertigo technically didn't start until the 90s, but some of the titles that ended up on them were started in the 80s. And, the DC Vertigo stuff overall, you really can't go wrong with any of it. So, I mean, in terms of the classics, they had quite a few classic stories. In terms of the characters, not necessarily. I mean, with Batman, they had, Dark Knight Returns is kind of an alternate universe tale, Year One as well to a certain extent, but in terms of stories that were in continuity for them, there wasn't a lot. I mean, Nightfall was popular. I don't know if I'd call it a classic or not. We had Death and Return of Superman with Doomsday, which was varying degrees of successful as well. So I don't know. The Alan Moore stuff in the 90s continued to be amazing. League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Promethea, Tom Strong. His stuff was just amazing start to finish. They had a lot of different stuff. People forget Road to Perdition came from that era.
Yeah. I find it so comical that everyone refers to
Comical?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, comical that everyone refers to Death and Return of Superman like the greatest thing ever.
It was not.
They would not have killed him if Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, didn't marry them on the show. Originally, in the comics, and I've seen this on the special features on the Lois and Clark DVDs, they said that in the comics, they were originally going to get married in the comics, but because the TV show was doing it at the time in 93, 94, they're like, we'll just kill him in the comics.
The best is the video about that, though.
I know.
Starring Elijah Wood, which is fantastic. Anyone who hasn't seen it, go to YouTube and look up Death and Return of Superman.
But that was one of those things that it was the first time I had ever really seen a comic book on news. Like, nowadays, and this will be a future Geekcast radio episode, nowadays, everything is news. From entertainment people to just everything is news. It's not just politics, weather, sports, or, hey, this person got murdered on 4th Street today. It's just every single thing is news, especially in today's age with Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff. But I remember the stories. I remember seeing this on an actual news broadcast back then when it was a huge event in everyone's life, and it was like,
remember when killing comic book characters was new?
Yeah, exactly.
Jean Grey dies every 3 weeks now.
Well, she can always just rise out of the ashes.
Well, and that's one of those things that DC kind of set in motion that everybody's copied since, and they've done it to just about every major character. With their Death of Superman.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there were other ones before that I'm not familiar with, but that was the first mainstream one that they just kind of went haywire with, and then everybody started doing it afterward.
There's 3 that everybody remembers. I mean, that's one of them. The other big one was earlier, Jason Todd's death in Batman. Yeah. And then, of course, everyone remembers the iconic cover with Cyclops holding the deceased Jean Grey from the Phoenix Saga. Those are sort of like the 3 classic stories involving a death that most people remember, yeah.
Was there... I know I'm crossing over, and I should have asked you this in the Marvel episode. Was there ever a comic that... I don't know. Okay, we've all seen the death of Uncle Ben, but I mean, is there a starting point in Spider-Man that depicts that in the old comics?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I'm not up on Marvel a lot of stuff, so, but I mean, yeah, it's like,
it was literally the start of Spider-Man. So,
well, yeah, I understand that. We see it in the movies, we see it in the animated shows now, and it was just kind of commonplace. Okay, Uncle Ben dies.
It happens pretty much the same way in the comics. So,
yeah. And that's the other thing about, death in comics. Steve has said to me, "Oh, watch, they'll revive your most hated character in a couple of years." Yeah, that kid needs to stay dead. With the whole Jason Todd thing, I find that DC is very sadistic. Because they're like, we want you to vote. Should we kill him or keep him alive? Everybody called in and voted kill him.
Not everybody. It's a lot closer than people remember, but yeah.
Right, but...
It was big at the time. I mean, it had never really been... Nobody had really tried anything like that. And it was cool for a long time because the things that you always said were... the 3 certainties in comics are that Uncle Ben is dead, Jason Todd is dead, and... Oh, man, what the hell was the other one? I think it might have been Barry Allen was the 3rd one everybody listed. But, of course, since then, 2 of those have come back.
Yeah, pretty much. DC has had an amazing run. Yeah, sure, now a lot of the stories might not hold up, but there's still interest. Down the line here in the pullback, we are definitely going to have a Batman spotlight, and we're going to go through several different story arcs of.
You could
of
spend a
Batman.
show just on Batman. Dark Knight Returns,
Oh.
Year One.
Well, yeah, no. I mean,
Long Halloween.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you want me
That's
to
at
keep
least-
going or not?
That'll be at least 3 different episodes.
Now, to be fair, though, like I just listed some of the ones too. Like everybody remembers Watchmen changing the entire industry significantly. Sandman is still known as one of the best series ever. One that I never seem to mention that I desperately need to because it's one of my favorite writers. Again, from DC Vertigo, there was Garth Ennis's Preacher, which is another one. When people list their top 3 comics of all time, it's usually Watchmen, Sandman, Preacher.
Except for those of us who've never read that stuff.
No, but I'm saying, like, in general, for the long-timers, you'll hear 1 or 2, sometimes all 3 of those every single time.
Now, Ryan, nowadays you're not that much of a DC guy. Were you ever, I mean, I know we did your whole Origins episode, but that was very long ago. Were you ever big on DC back in the original continuity?
Oh, yeah.
Where did you start?
DC wise, I mean, I started like reading Superman and stuff when my brother had it. In terms of when I got into it, it's when I started a job at a bookstore, and one of the other guys there, at the time I was reading only mostly Marvel stuff. One of the other guys there was the opposite, and so I started hearing recommendations and everything from him. This is roughly the year 2002 or so. And so, yeah, I just started collecting everything I could. I think I started with I started with Green Arrow, oddly enough, and then sort of went out from there. I picked up I already had like most of the classic quote-unquote Batman stories, and I just sort of went on from there, and now I've got a whole ton of pretty much all of the characters.
Yeah. What are so we've got the modern age now, and we've got. How often before the actual relaunch? How often is DC didn't pull a Marvel every few months and reset, right? They continued their continuity up until New 52, correct?
No, they continued a lot of it actually, at least towards the end.
Right.
A lot of it intertwined between things. They were kind of, in essence, kind of mixing all their different franchise characters and having them do a lot of crossovers. I mean, between the death of Batman and the return of Batman and the
Trust me, DC rebooted their characters just as many times. There's no winner in this war, unfortunately.
Oh, no, I know,
how they rebooted them was different, though. They didn't, like, start over the numbering and everything. They would figure out, I mean, they would kill off a character, go on with another character for a while, and then figure out some way to revive the original character and take back over and kind of be like, oh, boom, we're back to the beginning.
The gist of sort of, like, the idea of them rebooting everything really started when Johns came in. And this is going to sound bad, even though I'm sort of a fan of his, but it became apparent pretty early on that Jeff Johns was just sort of doing his fan fiction in a lot of ways. He's a talented writer, but he very much wanted things the way he remembered or he grew up, and using those characters from the 60s. And in a lot of ways, that was a big mistake, because the majority of comic readers grew up with the characters that were there now. I grew up not knowing Barry Allen as the Flash. I knew Wally West and some of the others as Flash. Yeah. I grew up knowing Kyle Rayner and John Stewart as Green Lantern. I wasn't really around for the Hal Jordan stuff, but he came in and immediately brought those back, and then just completely shunted everyone to the side. I don't think anybody got the shaft. Oh boy, actually it's a toss-up between who got the shaft worse, Wally West or the absolute worst probably was John Stewart, who at one point it looked like they were just going to kill him off. And then DC just got pummeled by a write-in campaign and everything else. A lot of it based around the fact that, to be absolutely blunt about it, John Stewart is basically the only black DC character, which is another sort of group that they've had trouble with over the years, unfortunately.
Outside of Cyborg.
Yeah. In terms of the long timers, though.
Yeah. In terms of the long timers, yeah, Jon Stewart's
Not to
great.
mention, I mean, I like Cyborg, but he's never been a huge part of the big teams the way, Green Lantern is one of the founding members of the Justice League.
Yeah. And the thing with Cyborg is they do him in the DC universe movies, in the animated movies. I find that he's done very well as far as his characterization. Yet when you put him with the Teen Titans, they make the biggest joke out of him, like you've never oh God, I just can't stand Teen Titans in anything. Not just the old 2004 cartoon series, not this new crappy anime-looking Teen Titans Go series. I just don't. Oh my God. Ugh.
I liked the original. Good news, though, you don't have to worry about any of the old animated universe continuities anymore.
Yeah, pretty much. As we said, we'll get into the animated stuff a little bit later. Is there anything else we need to bring up about the old continuity?
No, I mean, the Vertigo stuff, they shuttered DC Vertigo years ago, which I think was a huge mistake. They haven't found a home for that stuff that's outside of what they normally do. Some of it's still running, obviously. Stuff like Fables is still going, just not under the DC Vertigo brand. But it's unfortunate, because I look at the titles published under DC Vertigo are some of the absolute best and most different comics out there ever. I mean, Transmetropolitan is one of my all-time favorite series. And if you're DC now, where the hell do you publish something like that? That's basically a send-up of the modern media. There's no place for it. And losing that, I think, was a mistake. This was long before the New 52. I'm not blaming that for it. It's just...
Oh, yeah.
I wish they still had a branch to do the sort of out-there weird stuff. Although, on the other hand... I mean, they're owned by Warner's. They have to turn a profit, so I can understand not wanting to take a chance on some of the odd stuff.
Yeah, it's just crazy. All right, before we head on into the relaunch, Steve, what are your top 3 favorite DC stories?
Out of the old or the new?
The old, the original continuity.
The old, I'd have to say, The Dark Knight Returns. Just because I just recently read that this year and I really enjoy it for the story alone and because of its influence on Batman since then. I like the Nightfall only because you get to see one of the first major falls of Bruce Wayne, and you get to see Azrael, John Paul Valley take over temporarily and kind of go apeshit, more or less, creating his own heavily armored Bat uniform where he manages to take down all of the rogues.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's because Batman's back's broken. And then, of course, the whole thing surrounding Bruce Wayne's death and revival. Just because he couldn't be killed by Darkseid's Omega beams. He got teleported to the past, and
I gotta say, no matter how big a fan you are of the recent stuff, if you had to pick 3 overall DC stories, there's no chance in hell anyone picks any of the new stuff.
Well, that's why I said the old.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like in general, like when I have to sit here and look back at all of the stuff.
Well, there's
they've
tons
published,
of great. There's tons of great stories.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Not the opposite way around. It's just there's so much stuff.
Yeah.
For me, I will go. I already mentioned a bunch of the big ones. Oh, God, it's so hard not to put Watchmen on this list, but I'm going to cheat so I can mention some other books that I really liked. Long Halloween, mostly because pretty much every modern depiction of Batman and his villains come from that. If you're a Batman fan, you need to own that book. It's also where Two-Face and his origins come from. A second would be... Or I'm going to put... Or not... Yeah, it's not numbered. Hell with it. Transmetropolitan, just to bring it up again. Then my other story, I'm going to go off the grid and say Tower of Babel, which was turned into an okay movie in Doom. But the thing with Tower of Babel that was awesome was it was one of the early times when we got a real shot of how incredibly dangerous Batman actually is. For people who don't know, quickly to sum it up, Ra's al Ghul has Talia steal Batman's files from the Bat computer and uses them to systematically eliminate every member of the Justice League. And it is fantastic.
Yes, it is.
And Ra's al Ghul is way cooler than Vandal Savage.
Oh, yeah, hands down. They should have done it the original way.
I know. So and with David Warner as Ra's al Ghul.
Oh, that would have been so awesome.
God, I love his voice.
He kicks the bucket, too. Oh, God. They should have done it with him.
Oh, geez, don't get me started on what's happening there. What the hell? 2 in, a week?
2 in 2 weeks. I know, that's
2
nuts.
weeks, yeah. It's depressing.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. You're going to hear a word from Darkseid himself. We'll be back to talk about the new 52 after this.
Flee. Impressive. No one has ever avoided my Omega Beam.
That all really happened?
Think so.
Then we won. Everything's back to normal?
That's a nasty cut, John.
You don't remember going on a mission with us today, do you?
I just got here.
The timeline's restored to equilibrium. We're the only 2 people who remember what happened.
That complicates things.
Now we're going to talk about the very much controversial, pretty much put a dividing line down the DC fandom, the New 52, which is a 2011 revamp and relaunch by DC Comics of its entire line of ongoing monthly superhero books, in which all of its existing titles were canceled, and 52 new series debuted in September 2011 with new first issues. Now, the only changes they did not make, they did not fully revamp Green Lantern, and they did not fully revamp Batman, because, we've already had stories going on for the past year for these.
Well, don't get me started on the Batman continuity.
That's why we're here to talk about it. I want you to get started.
Well, it's one of those things that, just getting off on my tangent now and getting on my soapbox, this has been one of my pet peeves for the entire New 52 run. When the New 52 first relaunched and they had their 52 different lines and everything, and I started collecting some of them before I got bored, and then going back to it later, I figured out something with the Batman line. Not only did they manage to continue some of the Batman Inc. storyline from pre-New 52, and some of the other plot lines going on in the regular Batman Detective Comics and all the other various lines that they have. I don't know, the 8 that Batman's in. They screwed up the timeline with trying to redo his origin, in essence. They didn't allow for enough time, because they say that it's, 6 years that Batman's been Batman?
You're talking about the current 1-year storyline that's going to happen over the next 10 months now.
Well, they say it's a 6
now with 0 year. Yeah.
Well, they're saying where issue 1 starts, it's 6 years that he's been Batman.
Yeah.
Which doesn't take into account the fact that he's had Nightwing, who was the first Robin, and it clearly states that they've all been in that position. He was the first Robin. He became Nightwing. Then you have Jason Todd, who became the second one, became Red Hood. He died and came back. Then you have Tim Drake, who eventually becomes Red Robin. And then you have Damian Wayne, who's 10 years old. So this is where the whole thing gets convoluted, because it doesn't allow for that 15, 20-year gap in there. It's 6 years, and somehow he's had a child with Talia, who would have never even associated with him if it weren't for the fact he was Batman. So you have this 10-year-old kid on top of it, and then all these previous Robins, and it makes no flipping sense.
Yeah, it really doesn't, and it's one of those things where now that we are through, as of this recording, we are 3 issues into Zero Year, Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's epic year-long event that they're doing in the current New 52 Batman issue, and it just, like, when they first started talking about this, I saw interviews with the two of them. Scott Snyder, who is the writer, said that this is technically the year before year one, and you're going to see bits and pieces of the origin that you've never seen before. Yet, if this is supposed to be building up to him becoming Batman, why in issue 21 is he in a purple and gray suit on a friggin' motorcycle? And it goes back to what you just said. It's supposed to be 6 years earlier from the current end of Death of the Family storyline, and it just makes... Oh, God, We'll bring this up in the Pull Bag episode 27 when we have a full review of Batman 23, but Batman 22 and 23, so far, I'm let down. I don't know. So other New 52 stuff, Batgirl is back. They basically wrote out Alan Moore's Killing Joke. I know I still need to read that. I want to read that to see what happened. I mean, I know the Joker shot her. I get it, but I want to, see how that story pans out and she becomes Oracle. And now, is there a storyline? Because I thought the number 0 issue for Batgirl would have told us the story of how she.
They're going to actually bring that up in another issue, like. There's going to be like a 1-issue shot or something.
Yeah, issue 25, 0 Year. Yeah. See, I wanted to know the story of how she, in Batgirl number 1 for the New 52, it says that she worked her way up. She had physical therapy and, surgery and whatever else. But I still want to see that. Ryan knows, and you know as well, Steve, how I'm a glutton for punishment of I need to see the beginning of something.
A lot of
a
lot of the issues that I have, and I think a lot of people have with the New 52, could have been alleviated really easily, and that is if they just decided to just make it a reset. I think comic book fans are used to that at this point. So, I mean, just make it a reset. But instead what they did was they picked and chose certain things to decide that, okay, this happened, this didn't. This is important, this is not. And I think to a lot of fans, that was more offensive than just doing a total restart. And that's kind of where it went wrong. I think the timeline issues would have been alleviated if you just say, you know what, this is just a relaunch.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I remember before I even got into this, before I even picked up Batman 13, was that I kept hearing, oh, the New 52. They're throwing out the previous 70 years of continuity, and I'm thinking, what? Like you said, it would probably be better for a relaunch versus, just hitting the reset button versus putting on a full-on relaunch. I don't know, though. I think for me, in certain titles that I read, I don't know if I can go back and read the other ongoings of, say, Batgirl or Nightwing or, sure, I can read a trade paperback or something like that, but I'm really, specifically those two titles, honestly, Batgirl and Nightwing easily, for me personally, are the two best titles DC has going right now. They just are. The storytelling, the art, it's done so damn well. What other New 52 stuff are you paying attention to or interested in, Ryan?
I mean, I'm still reading the Batman stuff, paying attention to it. I like, basically anything that Scott Snyder's doing. Jeff Lemire is one of the better remaining writers. That's sort of one thing I should have gotten into, too, is that the shift or the decision to move to the New 52 resulted in an awful lot of my favorite writers leaving the company, which was a colossal loss, especially since they went straight over to Marvel.
Marvel, yeah.
And, I mean, one of them has had now the comic that's been named Book of the Year 2 years running now. So, oops. Probably shouldn't have let Wade leave. They also lost, I mean, Brubaker, they had lost a couple of years before, but he knew what was coming, and that's why. And then Rucka left with Wade. Oops. So, yeah, that hurt them badly. But in terms of remaining ones, I still read those two. I like Gail Simone a lot. I just don't always get around to reading her titles, unfortunately. Because I'm lazy.
Yes, you are.
No, not really. I only have a finite amount of time, so.
Right.
What is true.
Yeah, I need to get around to reading her other titles outside of Batgirl, but I'm just so engrossed in that book that's all I want to read. As of this recording, I just wrote up my Batgirl 23 review, and I'm like, in the final thoughts, I'm like, why can't this be a weekly series? Because it's like, I want more now. Outside of the timeline issues, I don't have that many complaints about the New 52. Again, I'm pretty much one of those people that's coming into it new as it's happening. As I've said before in this episode and the last 24 episodes of the show, I haven't, I wasn't into comics in the beginning, in the olden days. So, what I do really enjoy, specifically to basically my favorite male character of DC Comics, which is Nightwing, I really love how Kyle Higgins is doing this whole backwards storytelling with the history of Gotham. It really started, at least for me, it started in Gates of Gotham with him and Snyder. And it's just interesting to see the juxtaposition of Gotham in the 1800s and Gotham, quote-unquote, nowadays. I really do like that, and I like where that character is going. Hopefully he'll get an issue 26, because there are rumors that after Forever Evil, he will be forever affected. I just hope to God they don't shoot him and put him in a wheelchair.
He's dead.
Quiet, you. Steve, what else do you want to say about the New 52?
Well, the other thing I found quite funny is they launched this 52 line, and then they had all these stories that they thought would be great, and then they've managed to cancel, I don't know, close to 12 of their previous stories, and then relaunch other stories to replace them so they can continue having 52 different stories going at the same time.
Yeah.
They've had trouble keeping creative teams. I mean, Green Arrow's the absolute best example of that. He had just constant change on that title, and nobody stayed on it, and it was terrible for the first chunk of time. Now they finally got a solid team that's working with it monthly. But I mean, overall, I wouldn't say... The thing that bothers me the most is a lot of the stories could have been told in the old universe. There wasn't necessarily a great reason to reset it yet, but on the other hand, I do like that it has gotten people like Mike and some others into reading comics, so I'm not certain that the good outweighs the bad, but I mean, I don't know, time's going to tell on that, so.
I think for me, with the consistent changes and not having consistent creative teams on books, again, specifically to Batgirl and Nightwing, Batgirl started out with Adrian, I don't even know how to say his Seif, I guess is how you say his last name. Started out with him, and then it went to 3 or 4 different people, then it went to 3 or 4 different people, and now it's up to the current team, which has pretty much been on since Simone came back, which is something else I'll bring up in a second. Same thing with Nightwing. Nightwing started out with Eddie Barrows and went through, I think, until issue 14 or 15, and that's all well and good, and that's great for consistency style. And I don't know, but I think something happened in Barrows' life personally. I don't know if he got sick or what it was, but he left the book, and then you had like 3 or 4 different artists come in, like issue 16, 17, 18, and 19.
He didn't want to kill off Nightwing.
Funny, jackass. And then, by issue, 18 and 19, you had Brett Booth on for a while, and then I really liked his style and how he drew the characters and everything else in the book, and then, oh wait, no, he's only on... I don't like this whole run of having Okay, sure. From the beginning, it's been Kyle writing, and that's great. That's as long as that doesn't change, I will be happy, and I don't think it will, hopefully. But I don't like how you have the inconsistency of artists on books. Like, I don't understand why they constantly change up the artists on some of their issues, and I'm sure it's not just DC that does this.
No, I mean, you're going to get into it with when we do the Punisher stuff. Greg Rucka's Punisher run had a couple of substitute artists. Now, that was a little different in that at one point Cicchetto was sick, and then another point he had to leave because of personal reasons, just some stuff with his family, combined with just a massive workload within Marvel. Unfortunately, that seems to be the nature of the business nowadays. Same with delays. There used to be the old joke about DC not being able to put out a comic on time. Then it became Marvel, especially with the legend that was Ultimate Wolverine versus the Hulk and that amazing, 7-year, I think, hiatus.
Yeah.
One of the greatest delays in the history of comics. And now it just seems to be both of them frequently missing dates.
It's both of them and IDW as well.
IDW's got sort of an excuse. I mean, in that they are smaller and it's a lot fewer people they have to move around and to work on these things. But yeah, it's...
Well, originally there was one of their Transformers titles that was supposed to come out on a certain date, and then it got moved up to this week, and now it's moved it back to the end of the month. And I'm thinking, really? You can't pick a friggin' date to release your book? Really? Come on now.
As a side note, I know this happens every single time I start talking about DC. I open up a page that I've got bookmarked that's a list of all the stuff. It's all the stuff that DC Vertigo published. And every time I look at it, I'm like, holy shit, how could you ever close this down? There's so many I forget about. Obviously, Swamp Thing. 100 Bullets is one I didn't mention. That is one of the greatest series of all time. Sandman, Hellblazer, which I didn't mention. Oops. DMZ, another amazing one. Obviously, I mentioned Preacher and Transmet. Why the Last Man, another amazing series. American Vampire, which is just fantastic and still running until January 2013. So yeah, I could just keep going and going, but oh man.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where...
Yeah, and that has nothing to do with the reset. So like I say, I'm not blaming that, and I don't actually blame DC for it either. Like I said before, it's hard to take a risk on this stuff when you get that big, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Steve, what are your top 3, doesn't have to be in any order, but top 3 DC New 52 titles that you're enjoying?
Well, I would have to say that for the most part, I'm enjoying the Detective Comics run. I'm enjoying the Batman line, and then I was collecting a massive multitude of other Bat comics or DC in general. But the other one I'd have to say is Batman Beyond.
Oh, yeah.
Just for the fact that it keeps touching on the animated series content and...
which is gone now.
No, it's not. What do you...
No, they're going to be bringing it back.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the comic series is going to keep it going, but of course the animated films have now famously moved on.
Yeah, they've kind of fizzled out into...
The new stuff, yeah. In terms of new stories, Court of Owls was fantastic, if we're talking about individual stories.
Okay.
Jeff Lemire's run on... not Jeff Lemire, damn it. Snyder's run on Swamp Thing as well was quite good. And he picked up a lot of the old threads from the Moore stuff from way back when. And I don't necessarily have a third. I liked the changes... I'm going by arcs, I should mention, not by runs.
That's fine.
I like the changes they've made with Green Arrow, and it's become a fairly solid book on a regular basis. So there's some of them that are getting there, and I think that when the trades are out, it'll read better than it does right now. But
oh yeah, Yeah, I can tell you right now, trades read so much better. Like, single issues are great, don't get me wrong. I've said this before on the show. Single issues for me are great for the, oh my god, I need to read this now or else I feel like I'm being left out of it. You know what I mean? But as far as actually enjoying a story, the trades are so much better. For me, I gotta say, I only have two. And it's the two I've pretty much said the entire episode. Batgirl and Nightwing. Those are the two that I really... Early on in Nightwing, like issue 8, 9, 10, and 11, there were a couple of art things and a couple of character designs I didn't care for. But pretty much the entire run's been damn good. Same thing with Simone and Batgirl. Batman, I have yet to read Court of Owls. I'm waiting on the trade for that. So I'm not judging it on that. I'm judging it on starting in the with the Death of the Family storyline. And Death of the Family ramped up, and then nobody fucking died. And then they went over to Ink and some Batman clone killed...
Well, it was Damian's enhanced clone.
Right.
It was aged. He
killed
himself.
Yeah, it's pretty much a form of suicide. And I cannot bring myself to put Batman as a top 3 title because while I enjoy it to a certain extent right now in Zero Year, oh my god. It's like someone trying to take a slow drag on a cigarette where there's no tobacco left in the cigarette. It's just one of those things where it's like, oh my god, do something already. Alright, we're going to take another quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the animated stuff. We'll also talk about a little bit of the film stuff since this is a DC episode. I know it's not technically comics, but you get the idea. We'll be back after this.
Is this thing on? Oh, goody. Why, hello there. It's your dear old Uncle Joker here. I bet you're asking yourself, what could I be possibly doing here of all places? Well, I'm laughing at the fact that this new podcast presented by Geekcast Radio is called Legends of the Dark Knight. Who the heck knew the Bat was so popular? Ugh. Join Steve, Mike, and sometimes Tara for reviews on the greatest DC animated universe cartoon to ever meet Gotham City. So join moi for the talk of the town, or I'll send Captain Clown after you. He gets mighty angry when he doesn't get to have his garbage skull. So put on a nice big smile and join us for the next Geekcast Radio Network podcast, Legends of the Dark Knight. A disgrace to the name Joker. Why, in my day...
Here, kid. I think you lost this.
I could have handled him.
Coulda, woulda, didn't.
You sound just like Batman.
I'm nothing like him.
Yeah, right. The mask, the attitude, the long underwear.
Drop it.
I'd love to know what happened between you two.
Things change.
Alright, so we're going to talk about the animated stuff a little bit and the movie stuff as well. The DC Animated Universe apparently is dead, according to Ryan.
Not dead, but they have no plans anyway in terms of upcoming. Right. They want to do the more recent stuff rather than any of the old. And basically, like, they don't want to do any free New 52 items anymore. They'll do a bit of alternate universe stuff, but for the most part, it's all going to be... And I mean, they've sort of retired the animated universe, and when I say that, I mean like the Justice League, Batman Beyond, Batman the Animated Series, the one continuity, essentially. And that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, see, that's the thing. It's like, okay, the DC animated universe pretty much ended with Justice League and Batman. You know, if you go chronologically, Batman Beyond was the end of it. But with Batman Beyond now at the name of 2.0, they're continuing it with digital stories. And again, my current favorite male writer, Kyle Higgins, has taken that over, and I absolutely love. There's only one chapter of his story out so far, but I love what he did with it. But yeah, I mean, it's a shame that they're not going to go back to that style, and I think one of the reasons why they're not going to go back to it is because Bruce Timm is no longer at Warner Brothers.
Well, I mean, the excuse they're using is they want symmetry between the lines, and yeah, I can sort of understand that, but I think it's a huge mistake to just skip out on years of really classic works. I mean, people loved seeing Dark Knight Returns in year one animated. I think a lot of people would love to see Killing Joke. A huge one that I think could work really well is Long Halloween, since that's where the origin for a lot of the characters that we see in media now for Batman comes from. So, I don't know. It's an odd choice.
Yeah, and as far as the DC Universe animated original movies, we just had the release of Justice League The Flashpoint Paradox, which was DC's big old storyline that ended the old continuity. And then the first New 52 storyline will be Justice League War. Let's go down the voice talents, because voice talents of Jason O'Mara as Batman, Michelle Monaghan as Wonder Woman, Christopher Gorham as Flash, Alan Tudyk as Superman, I cannot see that, Justin Kirk as Green Lantern. Wait, why aren't they using, what's his name? Fillion. They always use him.
Nathan Fillion?
Yeah. Shemar Moore as Cyborg and Steve Bloom as Darkseid.
That's the only voice I can get behind.
Okay, I can get behind Shemar Moore as far as Cyborg goes, but I cannot wait to hear what Steve Bloom does with Darkseid. Jason O'Mara, the only thing I've seen him in, and this is kind of sad, is the One for the Money film based on the Janet Ivanovich book. And he doesn't... I've heard his voice. It doesn't sound like a good... I don't know what he's going to do to change it, obviously, in this new film, but like he just his voice just, to me, doesn't sound like anything Batman would be at all. The other one they have upcoming, because on July 20th of this year, as part of Comic-Con, DC Comics announced on Twitter a new animated feature, Son of Batman. The film will be based on Grant Morrison's Batman and Son storyline. So yay, we get to see fucking Damian Wayne on a fucking movie. Great. I won't be getting that. I don't care if Conroy does come back for the voice. And it doesn't say anything about a voice cast for this, but Damian Wayne.
The other decision I'm not a fan of is the announcement that this will also supposedly mean they're going to rotate the voice casts and try to use celebrity voices when possible, which I'm not a fan of, because
that usually proves to be an epic fail anyway.
Yeah, and not to mention
DreamWorks, majority of DreamWorks films that have celebrity voices fail.
Not to mention, I mean, they already have a fantastic group of voice talent that they used to use regularly, or that they can swap out, but...
Yeah. The other one that was announced is Batman Assault on Arkham. Again, July 20th this year as part of Comic-Con. DC Comics announced on Twitter a new animated feature, Batman Assault on Arkham. The film will take place in the same universe as the Warner Brothers Batman Arkham video game franchise. That's going to be slightly interesting.
Yeah, which has potential. Well, I think they have to if they're going to continue, if they're going to have it in that universe. I mean, that's who voiced him for the other games, and then oh god, how
Roger Craig Smith is the current
all right
one.
Let's hope nobody important, no offense, is listening to this, or else I'm gonna get in trouble, but having played a good chunk of Origins, he is doing a terrible Kevin Conroy impression. They should have just gotten Conroy. It's baffling to me why they have him. And I mean, maybe they're going to touch up the voice and fix it for the final version, but I mean, what I've gone through, it doesn't sound good. I question that decision.
Yeah, that and originally I thought when I first saw the trailer, the little teaser thing where he didn't really speak, I thought the grunts were um
Conroy.
Conroy, but it wasn't.
I knew
And
it wasn't Conroy, and I could tell he was trying to imitate a bad copy of him.
yeah,
And when you know that Conroy has the ability to, being that he's a voice actor, pitch his voice lower or deeper depending on the age of his character, being that he has played a younger Bruce Wayne and he has played a younger Batman, a modern Batman, and then an old Batman.
yeah,
It makes more sense to actually just keep him rather than
Yeah.
try and get an imitation. Like, I could see the Mark Hamill replacement, being that they were looking for somebody to do an imitation and do it younger,
yeah.
being that Hamill doesn't want to do the role anymore. So I could get that, but having a guy that is pretty much known for playing Batman and everyone loves his portrayal of it, why replace him?
Yeah, and I do know that Hamill has gone on record saying the only way he would come back to the voice is if they did Killing Joke. Which sadly it doesn't look like they're going to be doing that. As far as the live action scope of DC, let's face it, the last 40 years, it's been Batman and Superman movies. You know, we've got Man of Steel 2 coming up in 2015, supposedly Justice League the same year, and then in 2016 they're going to supposedly be doing a Flash film. Don't get me wrong, it depends, like Ryan said earlier, his Flash is Wally West. Same as mine. I didn't even know. I knew of the Flash in the old TV series, but it wasn't something I cared about at all. Even when I watched Flashpoint Paradox, okay, it's Barry. Okay, it's Iris. That's great. Okay, it's an interesting story. I want to know what the hell's going on with Batman and why is he firing a fucking gun? That I just again, I haven't read any of the Flash comics, so obviously I'm not going to sit here and judge them on their story or whatever else because I've never read them. But Flash isn't a character until Justice League that I actually cared about, and I haven't cared about Flash since because they're all about, hey, it's Barry. I don't give a shit about Barry. I'm sorry, I don't. If they start doing Wally West stories, hey, I'm on board. I'm all for it.
That's why I think the shift was a bit of a mistake. I mean, there's a lot of people in that boat, and a lot of people who grew up with the Justice League cartoon series that have no idea who Barry or Hal are.
Yeah. The final thing we are going to talk about is the current run, Batman Beyond Unlimited, which is now in print, is Batman Beyond Universe. Adam Beecham, Norm Brayfold started out with Batman Beyond Unlimited. They told the story of the 10,000 Clowns to begin with, and then after that, they did the Undercloud storyline. Since that time, they've relaunched it digitally called Batman Beyond 2.0. Kyle Higgins is on the writing. I don't know who. I think it's Tony Silas that is doing the art on that. Yeah, that's right. And Kyle, because Kyle loves the animated universe, just like most of us do, he's really going to do some interesting things with Batman Beyond 2.0, and the storyline picks up 1 year after Joker Night from Adam's story. I'm just loving that, and it took me almost 2 weeks, Steve, to figure out how that first chapter ended and what was actually going on. Oh my god.
Nice.
Oh god. I so totally didn't get it. I was like, hey, there he is, and oh, wait. Oh my god, I'll talk to you about that off air. Like I said, anything in the Bat family that Kyle does, I will read. Honestly, he's got some of the best writing out there. Same thing with Gail Simone. I'm so glad that we had the internet outcry to get her rehired. Because that was just one crappy situation right there. You bring in a new editor and he fires you via email, that's messed up. But yay, the internet wins everything.
Yep.
Ryan's not a fan of the internet winning everything.
No, it doesn't always happen, and sometimes it doesn't always work out well.
Yeah, that's true. Anything else we need to bring up about DC Comics or DC Entertainment or anything like that, Ryan?
Not that I can think of. I mean, the live action stuff, we've all heard all the rumors. Nobody seems to know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, Superman Batman's probably up next, but now it won't be Legendary working on it. Supposedly they've thrown a ton of money at Christian Bale, and he's refused. So, I mean, they'll probably try to find somebody new. The casting for Lex Luthor seems to be down to Mark Strong or Bryan Cranston. Either would be fantastic choices.
I think Cranston would make a perfect Jim Gordon.
Well,
you stole my line.
He would be a good Jim Gordon, but if there's one thing Cranston has now proven is that he can act in pretty much anything. I mean, he went from Hal to freaking Walter White. And then don't forget last summer when he was in Argo, Drive. He did 3 movies at once, as well as continuing his turn as Walt, which would earn him another Emmy. He can do pretty much anything at this point, I think. So he's up there. Mark Strong is fantastic, too. He's currently on AMC's other show that follows Breaking Bad. So you can catch him on that, but he's an excellent actor as well.
See, I know it won't happen, but I honestly would not mind them bringing Spacey back. I honestly wouldn't mind that. He was the best thing about Superman Returns.
And that's the problem, though. I mean...
Yeah, Superman Returns.
Yeah, too many people see it and remember that, and that's why, as much as I hate to say it, it probably can't happen either, because there'd be too many people would go, oh, this must be the same movie. I'm not going to go see it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Ryan, if people would like to interact with you, or if you would like people to interact with you, where can they do so?
Why in God's name would anyone want to interact with me? The best place is probably Twitter. I'm just at Nightbeat on Twitter. All one word, NIGHTBEAT.
Steve, what about you?
Yes, you can get a hold of me on Twitter at SCP21.
All right, awesome. Join Ryan and I next week when we will be reviewing Hawkeye Volumes 1 and 2 by Matt Fraction. Kill me now.
Oh, come on. It wasn't that bad.
Make your great escape into comics. We will see you next week.
What about the whole secret identity thing? I mean, I trust you guys, but I'm not sure I'm ready to...
Wally West, Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne.
Show off.
Red hair. It suits you.
You think?
Change, now. Happy? Call me when it's important, and not before. Gentlemen, it's been an honor.
You still try to fight. Can't you see that it's hopeless?
That man won't quit as long as he can still draw a breath. None of my teammates will. Me? I've got a different problem. I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something, to break someone. Never allowing myself to lose control, even for a moment, or someone could die. You can take it, can't you, big man? What we have here is a rare opportunity for me to cut loose and show you just how powerful I really am.
You just heard the latest episode of The Pullback, GCRN's comic book review podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate our show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Call the voicemail line, 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you were leaving the message for and your name. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. You can send us an email, feedback@geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter @GeekCastRadio. So until next time, unleash the geek in you.